Hello, I'm Jason Connolly, CEO of JMC Legal Recruitment, a national and international legal recruitment agency. Now, I've been doing a series of vlogs over recent weeks, tackling a whole range of different subjects in legal. And I've been asked several times to answer how to answer the most dreaded interview questions. Now, it's something that makes us all nervous when going to interview. How do you address those tough questions and how do you answer them? So in this vlog, I'm going to attempt to answer many questions that I've been submitted from both lawyers, paralegals, partners, all on LinkedIn. And I'm going to take these questions by the horns and try to answer them for you today. What do I mean by a competency-based question? It could be anything that involves describing a situation or a circumstance or something that's happened in your career. The method I'm going to use is the STAR method. Now, there's lots of literature about this online, and it involves four key points, which I will talk about now. Now, in the STAR method, the first thing to describe is the situation. What was the circumstance? What was it that happened? What was the outline and the overview of the situation in hand? You want to describe this and really describe what were maybe the hurdles to overcome, what were the problems, what were the things that you had to deal with. Now, the second thing is to describe the task. What was the matter in hand? What was the job? What was it that you had to do? I think it's also really important on this point to perhaps talk about the time scales that were perhaps you were working to. What were the timelines? Were you working to a certain deadline that was really important that it must be met? You want to give a really concise outline of the task, and I always think it's good to think about a few examples before the interview, so when you do go to talk about these, you're not going to be stuttering, you're not going to be having to collect your thoughts many times throughout the interview. You want it to come across as sharp, smooth, concise and to the point. Now, the next point is action. You want to describe the actions that you took to address the situation, but you want to keep the focus on you. It might be a situation where you worked in part of a team, worked as part of a larger organisation, but the interview is all about you. So you want to be talking about I rather than we. What is it that you did? Yes, you might have worked as part of a team, but what's important here, it's you that's being interviewed and we want to know what it is that you did. It might well be a team effort, but it could be just about what you contributed to the team. Was it your communication skills? Was it that you had to address a particular problem? Again, what was it that you did? Now, lastly, R for result. Describe the outcome of the actions and don't be shy about taking credit. I think all too often British people, we're very modest, but an opportunity is an interview is your opportunity to take credit for what you've done. What you want to do throughout this point of the explanation is explain what was it that happened, what did you accomplish, what did you learn, and lots of positive results. If you can link back anything in the results piece there to perhaps part of the job specification, if you're going for a job perhaps that requires a certain attribute, a certain skill, a certain point on the job specification, if you can link back that result to that point on the job specification or to that particular attribute, that's going to sell you really well, and it's almost going to be a tick in the interviewer's mind. When you're looking at a job specification is a wish list of all the attributes they want that candidate to have. So what you want to try and do throughout the interview process is to be ticking off these points in the interviewer's mind. Now, it's a misconception that you need to meet every point on a job specification. It's very rare when hiring that a candidate ticks absolutely every box. It is a wish list rather than a shopping list when it comes to a job specification. So as long as you're ticking the majority of the boxes, a lot of the time finding the right candidate for the role does often come down to personality anyway. So that's what I would do, is always use the STAR anagram there for when it comes to describing a situation, a task, an action, and a result. The key when describing a situation is to turn a negative into a positive. Often employers are going to be asking you throughout an interview to give examples of something that you might have struggled with, a challenge, a difficult situation, or something that resembles that kind of line of questioning. It's not necessarily about there being a negative situation. We all are going to deal with negative situations throughout the course of our day-to-day role. We all make mistakes. We're human at the end of the day. It's not about the mistake that you've made or about the challenge in hand. What it's about in an interview is turning that into a positive. We'll talk about that throughout some of the next questions that I'm going to address. Now, this is always a difficult situation and a difficult one to explain. The employer can also disguise this question using other variations of describe a situation where you faced conflict or describe a situation where you failed. So when you're describing this situation, I would use the STAR technique that we talked about at the start. First of all, to outline the situation. Describe what the circumstances were, describe what the challenge was that you faced. This question is really about letting the interviewer see how you deal with adversity and difficult situations. We all at times have things that don't go to plan, but what the interviewer is really looking for when you describe using the STAR technique is how you remained calm when maybe you spotted a mistake. What was it that you did with that mistake? Did you ask for help? Did you go to colleagues? Did you remain calm? Did you deal with it in a proper manner? Did you follow any procedures, protocols, or guidance, handbooks, policies? What was it that you did to address the problem? Secondly, they could be looking for is recognizing, first of all, that you even made the mistake in the first place and making those people aware. What was it that you did to mitigate the risk and make sure that it didn't happen again in the future? And how was it that you overcame this? Did you stick to the procedure once you'd noticed there was a problem? And so on. What you really want to do with this question is just show that when you had the mistake or you had the challenge or you had the problem, how you dealt with it and turn that negative into a positive. If it was a negative situation, what was the learning that came from that situation? What was it that you could do better in the future? What was it that you could maybe do to change the way that your company or organisation handles those types of problems? This question, I think, is when you strip it down, a basic question. It's all about understanding what it is that you did, how it could have gone better next time, and how it was that you addressed the problem when you found out. I think using the STAR technique is the way to go on this question. And I would always, when going to an interview, have at least one or two examples of questions that resemble this type of outline. So describe a situation where you face conflict or a difficult situation. I would have a few of those prepared because quite often they do come up, especially more at the junior level. I think that's quite a difficult question at times because how can you narrow down one particular strength or one particular thing you do that stands you out? This could also be a difficult question as well, as a lot of the time we could be very modest. We might not want to necessarily narrow it down to one thing. But what I would say is this question could be really useful for what is the job specification and what is the role and how qualified are you for the job. This is a really important platform, this question, to sell yourself. What is it? What are the important attributes to the role and what is it that qualifies you for that specific role? If this role is really reliant on great communication skills or commercial awareness or being able to generate business, this question is going to allow you to answer, to tick off those boxes in the interviewer's mind. So I would always say when it comes to this question, to think about what is actually needed for this role, think about what is the actual thing that the interviewer is looking for and pivot off the back of that. Sometimes it's difficult to say what is the absolute greatest skill that you've got. It might even be in the question you come back with two answers. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. It can be a tricky question, but I think when you strip it back, you just want to think about what is it that the interviewer is looking for from this position in terms of soft skills. I think this can be a really difficult question to answer, and I think if I was asked it, I would often sometimes struggle throughout my career to necessarily pin down on what is my greatest achievement. This could be anything in regards to personal or your career. But I think what's really important about this particular question is to think of an example that is in some way related to the job specification. If you come back with an example that is in no way related necessarily to the job, I think this is a wasted opportunity to talk about something that could be really that could really sell you for the job. For instance, if you'd won a particular large contract, or you'd won a particular tender for a piece of work, and this role is maybe a senior associate position, working towards partnership, where you're going to be out there on the front line, bringing in business, trying to win work, and you're maybe building up to partnership in your career, just to use that as an example. That's going to sell you really well. As nice as it might be to talk about a sporting event that you'd won, which, don't get me wrong, could show that you're very competitive, and sports people or anyone that competes in sports do have certain attributes and that winner's mentality. There could be a better example there. I do think this question does pop up quite often, so I think it's a really important one to prepare for, and you want to make sure that you've got a strong example. But I think the most important thing is, with the example, being able to relate it back to the job. So when you give the example, you're almost at the end of the example saying why you think it's relevant to the job. And I think that's very important. So it might be, my greatest achievement was winning a large contract. Why I feel that's relevant to the job is because this role involves a large part of business development, or something to that effect. I think it's one to think about, and I think your greatest achievement can take a variety of different forms, and sometimes it does come down to what people do in their personal life. But I always think that you want to relate every answer that you give in a job interview in some way, maybe not directly, it can be slightly more indirect, but back to the interview that you're giving, back to the job that you're interviewing for, and making it relevant is really important. This can be a difficult question, but it's really important, I think, in this answer that you don't come across as overly negative. We're all going to have sometimes negative reasons on why we want to leave our current role. It might be that you don't like the team that you work as part of. It might be that you and your line manager don't have great synergy. It might even be that you're not getting the prospects that you want, and expectations have been mismanaged, goalposts have been moved since you've been there. But I think what's very important in this is to focus on the positives of what you want to do moving forwards, and so on. When you're giving your answer, it's always very important that you're always honest, you always tell the truth when it comes to why you're looking to leave your current position. But I think what you want to do is focus your answer on the future. Normally, there's always a positive reason behind why someone's looking to make a move. It might be that they feel they're not going to get the progression that they want in their current role. But what I wouldn't do is over talk your reasons for looking to leave, because what you don't want the interviewer to maybe do is come to the conclusion that you might be an overly negative person. As sometimes what can tend to happen is you start off talking about a situation which could be a negative situation, which then leads on to more negative conversation, which then leads on to the team not being right, and before you know it, you've spent 5 minutes talking about a really negative set of circumstances. I think what's important is you give your reason, then you move straight on to what are you trying to achieve, what are you trying to do moving forward, and get the conversation back on a positive note. It might not always be the situation where your reasons for looking to leave are negative, but all too often than not, people do have a reason for looking to move. I think what's important with this question is you talk about what drives you, what is it you want to do, and maybe you talk about what it is you're not receiving, and talk about why you feel that if you was to receive those things, what positive results would come as part of that. My main point on this one is keep it positive if you can. I think this is quite a difficult question. For me personally, I think 3 words is not enough. But they might be asking, the interviewer might be asking you this to find out how you think, assess your cultural fit, find out what you think your best qualities are, and to assess who you are. I think for a lawyer in particular, you need to think about these answers. And I've put down a few words here that I would use to maybe describe a lawyer. You could be calm, professional, adaptable, conscientious, methodical, organised, analytical, a problem solver, observant, hardworking, focused. There's lots of different words, but again, I think it's about selling this back to the job specification. What is the role you're applying for? What is it, the top skills that the interviewer is looking for? And using those 3 words to again sell you back against the job specification. This can be a difficult question and it can fill people with dread trying to think about the answer to this. I think what's important about this question is you actually give thought to the answer before the interview and again sell against the job specification. Now you might be thinking, how can I sell a weakness against the job specification? It's all about turning the weakness or where you lack some strength into a positive. What the interviewer is ultimately looking to find out in this question is, what is your level of self-awareness? How aware are you of your weaknesses? That's what's important. So an example could be of one particular weakness is, I struggle to say no. It could be you're given work and sometimes you struggle to turn work away, manage your workflow, which in turn could be a negative because you're going to pile too much pressure up on yourself. You're going to work really long hours, not have a good work-life balance, which could in turn impact your work. But what you could do is, in a way, turn that round into a positive, saying that you're someone that really likes to help your colleagues. You're someone that likes to go above and beyond and someone people can rely on. But what you must do through levels of self-awareness is become aware of when your work streams or your workflow starts piling up and you're getting to a level where you're struggling. You then need to know when to go and ask for help. In a way, you can sell that back as a positive. And most weaknesses, if you use them in the right way and you give thought to them, can be turned around in a positive and sold back again against the job specification. This question really allows you to demonstrate your enthusiasm for the role. It also allows you to demonstrate your level of knowledge and showcase what it is you know about the company, what it is you know about the role, and why you want to work there. This question should be used to really amplify your enthusiasm. All too often, clients will sometimes come back to us and actually ask us, what did the candidate think about us? Did the candidate like us? What were the candidate's thoughts? Now, a client or a company should never be left wondering, do you want the job? They should know that. That should be echoed throughout the interview, and your level of positivity for the role should be showcased throughout the whole interview. So I think what's really important here is preparing beforehand, making sure that you know about the company, making sure you know about the role, and actually giving some time to think about why it is that you want the position. At the end of the day, the interviewer needs to feel a level or a sense from you that this is something that you're very much interested in. But be specific here under this question about what makes you a good match for the role. Is it skill set? Is it your level of responsibility, etc.? Now, I think one of the most difficult questions candidates can be asked in an interview is, what are your salary expectations? Now, I think it's typically British that we don't often want to talk about money. We don't want to talk about salary. And I would personally always try to avoid answering this question if possible during an interview. I would always leave it down to an experienced negotiator, e.g., your recruitment consultant, to do this job for you. However, if you're asked about this question, you might not want to talk about the answer, but I sometimes think it comes across not quite right for you to suddenly go, speak to my recruiter about this, or I don't want to answer this question. So I do think it needs to be answered. Now, the advice I give candidates when answering what are your salary expectations is to put it in the middle and sandwich it in between 2 other points. Now, what do I mean by that? So what you could do, for instance, if someone asks you the question, is you could start off by explaining salary isn't the most important thing to me about the role. Then use it as an opportunity to sell what is important to you. So the role, the opportunity, the company, the progression. Say that first of all. And then in the middle, you can say, this is what I'm looking for upwards in terms of salary. By this point during the process anyway, your recruiter should have spoken to you about what is the salary on offer, what can you expect in terms of the salary. And I would always say when you do talk about the salary, to always say I'm looking upwards of, or I'm looking around this figure, but I'm still learning about the role. So you can then put that in there as well. Then what I would do is I would finish it off on the other side of the point of the salary, of maybe talking about the prospects in the future or something else that makes it so you're selling yourself again. It's not just about the money. What else is it that's important to you? I think if an employer was to ask me that question and the first thing you come out with is I'm just looking for this, I think it could come across much better if sandwiched in between lots of other positive things, and at the end of the day it's giving you much more of an opportunity to sell yourself. Now, I hope all the answers to these questions have been helpful, and if you would like specific interview guidance or advice, we can give that here at JMC. I think when we prepare candidates for interview, we will always go through that person's specific background against the job specifications and actually do specific interview preparation. All of these answers have been very generic to try and help candidates who will be watching in on this video. But if you do need assistance, get in contact, and I hope this vlog has been helpful.